This episode of the Rock and a Hard Place podcast brought to you by Tweaked Audio at tweakedaudio.com. Go to tweakedaudio.com and use the code HARDPLACE and receive 33% off of your order. That's tweakedaudio.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Rock and a Hard Place podcast. My name is Chris Cooner. I'm a DJ with Broken FM. You can check us out online at broken.fm if rock and roll is your kind of thing. Joining me today, well, let me start off with this. Paul is not here today, and there's a very good reason why Paul is not here today. And that reason is that he and his wife welcomed their baby girl into the world on Thursday afternoon. So we are stoked for Paul and for Sarah that they have received this new life, and she was a rather large. I still haven't heard a name, so I have no idea what the baby's name is. Paul has not been very forthcoming with info. I only know the size of the baby because his wife Sarah posted that on Facebook. So 9 pounds, 13 ounces, 21 inches long. So a good sized baby, most definitely. Joining me, however, today, it takes two people to fill Paul's shoes. So first off, let me introduce the guy who you've heard his voice many times because he does the other stuff, but he's actually here, well, not here, but he's live with us now and talking, and his name is Kirk. What's going on, man?
Good morning, everybody. At least it's morning for me still.
Yes, it's still morning for me, too.
And my name is Kirk Bouts, and I'm a fan. I don't do radio right now.
That's right. He is just a dedicated listener to the podcast, and he creates the other stuff for us, giving us a taste of some of the other types of music that this podcast doesn't typically cover. So we are very appreciative of the work that he puts into that. This guy, normally we hang out together on Mondays, but he is with me in studio today. He is my co-host. He's also the program director for Broken FM, and his name is Tim Hopkins. What is up, my buddy?
What's going on? I actually have news to break. Breaking news.
Okay.
Actually, I do have a name for Paul and Sarah's baby.
All right, go ahead. Hit us.
Emily Braxton Gibson.
Emily Braxton. Very cool.
So apparently named after Sarah's father.
Okay.
So,
that's good.
Breaking news.
Her dad's name was Emily?
I know.
Oh, no, probably the Braxton part. That's
okay.
Braxton.
Well, you never
that's
know.
what I'm thinking. Yeah. All right. Good.
My grandfather's original name was Shirley, and so he went by Wade.
Wasn't that like John Wayne's real name is like Marion or something like that, right?
Yeah. So not quite as tough.
Yeah, not quite as tough. That's definitely. I imagine he probably got beat up in school a lot, but
better than the boy named Sue.
Well, there you go.
that was a John Wayne movie reference, wasn't it? So,
Johnny Cash song.
I was going to say that was a Johnny Cash reference.
Oh, that was. I thought it was a movie. Are you sure it wasn't a movie?
Well, this boy named Sue was a Johnny Cash.
It was a song. All right. See, this shows exactly what
it was made into a made-for-TV movie on AMC one time. Who knows?
Okay. I love how they make movies out of songs. Because there's so much information in the song to be able to make a movie off of.
Yeah, like the Christmas shoes.
Yes, with Rob Lowe, no less. It's like Rob Lowe.
My mom has probably seen it because my mom will watch Hallmark movies during Christmas and craft. That's what she does.
I'm so glad I don't pay for television.
I think it was one of the Christmas movies to actually have a negative rating on IMDb.
Yeah, Rob Lowe should just stick to DirecTV commercials.
Yes. I think Rob Lowe should definitely do that kind of thing. Okay. Well, we've got some stuff to talk about. I guess, Tim, I'm going to throw it to you and let you go over the whole audio A bit, since you, A, are the bigger baseball fan, and B, you're the one who brought this to discussion to the table. So let's chat about what happened to Audio A or with them.
So I am a big baseball fan, although I don't get MLB Network because I don't pay the extra money, I guess, for that. But apparently MLB Network has a show called MLB Now, and they picked Audio Adrenaline and their song Move to be the theme song. So apparently it goes out to 70 million households, and so 70 million households will be able to see, or at least hear, Audio Adrenaline in their song Move. So I guess we got a clip of that.
Yeah, we do. So, and it'll actually have some details about the song if you are watching the live stream. So here, check this out. And it quit, so let's try that again. Very cool. So that was Move by Audio Adrenaline. It's from the album Sound of the Saints. So we definitely have that to look forward to. Do we have any idea, Tim, when that song is supposed to come out?
I do not. Although I was just thinking, if that's more of an indication of where they're going, we might actually play them on Broken. So who knows?
Yeah, no, that's completely possible. I think that we'll see. I was concerned. I mean, look, Adam from Stellar Cart, I'm a big fan. I love Stellar Cart's music. I think that his songwriting prowess is really good. I don't see. You don't see a lot of that kind of writing, like in your face kind of writing. I'm wondering how much writing control he has for their music and who's kind of crafting the sound. Is this Mark Stewart heavily influenced in that? And is he dealing with a lot of that kind of stuff or what? I'm curious as to how that's all going to play out.
Well, apparently when Kevin Max was lead singer and he took some of the songs that were going to be Audio A songs for himself to put on his solo record. So maybe they had to start kind of from scratch and start with some new stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Definitely possible. Let me see here. Steven Christensen is apparently busy in the studio working with
We As Human.
We As Human. That's exactly right. So we've got some info on him, I guess, helping the band out to some degree, whether it's writing or production. Maybe he'll even be doing some guest vocals on it, something along those lines. I think it's going to be interesting to see where that pans out. What, I don't know, what kind of influence is Anne Boleyn going to have on the sound of We As Human, Well,
I don't know. I mean, but Stephen Christian's been everywhere. I know he's guesting right now on the new Fireflight single that we're playing on Broken. He's doing this, also working on a solo worship record. Mm-hmm. So I guess he's not touring, so he just got to keep himself busy.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's going to be doing some solo stuff now that Anne Boleyn is no more. I don't know. Kirk, what do you think of Steven Christensen working with We As Human? Do you think that's going to be...
I think it's going to be great.
What do you expect?
Especially the songwriter. Honestly, I don't know. We As Human only has that one album.
Right.
So I don't know how he's going to influence them, per se.
Well...
Because Christian can rock it. And I kind of hope he shows up as a guest vocal, because he's got that really smooth voice.
Totally.
And as far as his solo stuff, I hope his worship album that's coming out is better than Aaron's last one. Sorry.
That's quite all right. We like honesty here on this podcast. So
his last one wasn't terrible, but it just could have been so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could have been a lot more. Could have been a lot more to it.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to listen to a worship album and then to listen to Aaron on doing his interview with like the Bad Christian podcast and just some of the things that he said within that podcast. It's like I feel like, see, here I go again. I feel like they're walking this fine line, and I don't feel like they're walking it very well. And that kind of stuff concerns me. I'm wondering, it feels like they've got their feet very much into both worlds instead of being committed to one or the other. That's my own take on it. So I don't know. Am I off base, Kirk?
I don't think so. But at the same time, I respect an artist not wanting to have to make, as far as the Christian music part goes, or worship, having to make every song about their love of God or God's love of them. And sometimes just write songs with a worldview that's different than everybody else.
And that kind of stuff I'm fine with. I really am. It's a matter of their speech outside of the music and persona. When I hear them talking in they're saying words that to me no Christian should be saying, I guess.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm coming from is let the walk match the talk. And I don't feel like the walk is matching the talk because they're talking in a way that is disrespectful to God, in my opinion.
Sure.
My opinion.
I see that, and I also see the point of view that some people take of that's a cultural point of view. That's our culture's stance on some things.
Right.
So, it's a gray area, and sometimes people play in it a little too much.
Well, is it a cultural? I mean, is cursing considered a cultural thing?
I mean, I've heard Paul
The
make
words they use are.
Well, yeah, and I've heard Paul make the comparison to, like, some of the people in Europe. It's a very different world out there. I've never like I didn't grow up in Europe, so I really don't know. But that's what I'm going on. That it's a little bit looser out there. It's one of those things that I look at it and go like, well, I don't do it, but it's kind of I don't know. I'm kind of if it gets too much, then it's too much. But I don't worry about it an awful lot. We just worry about it in radio because you just can't do it on radio. It depends on where you're from.
Right.
Well, I got curious about where our curse words came from at one time, and I did a little research, and it could be wrong, but it was actually the standard language of a culture that got conquered is basically where our words came from. And so it's kind of one of those you don't hear those words translated in like ancient texts ever. They had different curse words back then. Right. French Canada, they use the sacraments of the tabernacle as cuss words. Mm-hmm. So it is partially cultural.
Gotcha.
I think I could be wrong.
I don't know. I've always felt that using curse words with any regularity just means that you have a very small vocabulary and are not very creative in your thinking of communicating.
I agree with that too.
So, that's
especially
just kind
if
of
your songwriting and even if you're using, the alternative curse words and that's all you're using, it's still to the same effect.
Yeah. I definitely agree. All right. What else news-wise did we have? We talked Stephen Christensen. Well, there was something else that we wanted to bring up, and I didn't write it down.
Well, I do have one other thing. If you are a Fireflight fan, we talked about them briefly because Stephen Christensen's on their new single. Mm-hmm. They're actually streaming their record 2 weeks early, which is not really done very often. But they're going to be doing that new release Tuesday. You can go hear their record, which I have right now just because they're going to be on the Broken Record soon, so I needed a copy of it. But, if you're not me, then you can go to new release Tuesday and go check it out.
Yeah, good deal. Man, I tell you, I have been listening to the new NF album, Mansion. That thing is fantastic. Such a good album. If you are into hip hop at all, you will love this album. It's stylistically, he's got a little bit of Eminem in his style, but of certainly better content overall. But it's also greatly focused on him. And just kind of his struggles with Christianity and with life. The title song Mansion is kind of like, do you guys remember the book that came out a number of years ago? It was called My Heart, Christ's Home. No? Really? Wow. So it's this little tiny book that basically goes through and talks about your mind being like a house and how we've got all of these different things, different rooms in our house that we compartmentalize different things. And as we allow Christ to renew our mind, he goes into those rooms and he cleans things up. So, where the magazines that you have on the coffee table in the living room, so to speak, he would change those out to be stuff that would be more appropriate things to think on. And it goes through all these different rooms, and finally it gets to like the bedroom closet. And that's where all of the secrets are stuffed. And it takes a long time for the author to allow Christ to see that room, for fear that once Christ sees that room, he's going to turn around and walk away and say, you know what, this has been a waste of time. I'm not doing this anymore, whatever the case may be. And so the song Mansion kind of goes through that same thing. It talks about allowing God into these different rooms of his mind and helping how he helps him cope with things and deal with things. It's a really fantastic piece, and it's definitely something that if like I said, if anyone out there listening is a fan of hip hop, it's definitely worthwhile. It's worth checking out. So
that's cool.
Yes, it's.
I've been listening to KB's new album, who's on Reach Records.
I keep hearing good things. I haven't listened to it yet, though.
He's got a song in there called Crowns and Thorns that he loops with Oceans from Hillsong.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's really nicely done. That's a good track. I could actually hear some of the contemporary stations possibly picking that up on their edgier hour.
Nice.
So from like 9 to 10 on Saturday nights on some of these stations.
Yeah, right. Or 1 a.m. to 2 a.m.
There you go.
That kind of stuff, exactly. Well, let me see here. I guess we'll dive into our different topics. Kirk wanted to bring kind of a blues thing, talk a little bit about blues. And,
I love the blues.
And that whole style. Kirk, why don't you break down a little bit of history on blues and just kind of fill us in on where the genre, I don't know, where it came from as much as you can without taking 2 hours to,
you got 6 hours?
Yeah, exactly.
I love the blues, and the fact of Christian blues is kind of strange because blues and gospel and jazz all have that origin of the slave times. The field workers and the cotton fields and stuff, and them singing in the fields, and it kind of came all out of that. And misconception about the blues is that you listen to blues to get depressed, and that's actually not what it's for. It's you listen to the blues to get undepressed, to lift yourself up. And you listen to other people's struggles and stuff. So like a lot of the old school blues players have a lot of faith in their lyrics, and there's some pastors that have been blues musicians like Blind Willie Johnson, and there's a lot of blues musicians that are like Pastor so and so. So there's a lot of great material out there. Song Nobody's Fault But Mine, Led Zeppelin covered it, and it's an old like gospel hymn blues song. So that's kind of, and it's kind of gotten away from that. It's gotten to more of the as they once talked about Aerosmith's blues album, about getting in, getting some, and getting out. Mm-hmm. So as with any music, it has morphed and changed with time, but there are still some musicians out there that will go back to its roots in some ways.
Good deal. Thank you. So, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you said you kind of set this up as a competition or a quiz of sorts.
Yes. I've got 4 clips.
I didn't fill Tim in on this, so maybe you can kind of tell us what's going on with this.
All right, I've been blindsided again. Every time I come on this show,
you come here,
I'm blindsided.
That's right.
All right. So I've got these 4 clips. I've picked artists that are doing some blues material that you would recognize. That blues is not always the thing they've done. Mm-hmm. And some of these aren't even blues. They're more blues rock, and feel and stuff. So if you want to go ahead and play number 1, let's see if you can determine who the lead singer is.
All right, let's see. This is clip, and all it says on my thing, just so everybody knows, all it says is clip 1. It doesn't tell me anything else, just clip 1. So here, check this out. Wow, I have no idea. That voice does not sound familiar to me at all. No.
How about you, Tim?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds vaguely familiar, but it sounds more like kind of old school ska to me. But that's just because I've been old school ska guys. Everything kind of sounds that way.
That was Dale Thompson of Bride.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he had a band called Dale Thompson and the Kentucky Cadillacs.
Okay. Dale Thompson.
It was originally Dale Thompson and the Religious Overtones, but the Christian bookstores wouldn't sell it.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Tie more into our topic we'll get to later. Maybe we'll actually revisit that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
All right, so
Track
hit up
2.
number 2.
All right.
You guys might recognize this band, maybe.
All right, let's listen.
Listen what I said. I didn't want you.
Man, you take their voices out of context, and I'm kind of lost. I'm not hearing that. You don't hear anything in there, Tim, that sounds familiar?
No.
All right, Kirk, what have you done to us today?
That was the 77s.
Oh, okay. It's been
That
a
was
long
their.
time.
I think it was actually the follow up to Drowning with Land in Sight. It was called Tom Tom Blues with the song Honesty, and the whole album just had this grungy garage blues rock feel to it.
Okay.
It's actually one of my favorites.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. All right. So we're 0 for 2 right now. Do we have any hope of getting this next one?
Well, this is a lady. This is a female singer. I think you might know this one. I'm not sure. So give it a shot.
All right. Let's see what this holds right here.
My Lord is a rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. My Lord is a rock in a weary land, shelter in the eye of the storm. Stop and let me tell you about chapter 1 when the Lord God his work had just begun. Stop.
All right. Is that Ashley Cleveland?
That is Ashley Cleveland.
Okay. I have a couple of her albums, and she is definitely an awesome blues rock type singer. She really has a great feel for the blues rock sound. And actually, I dated a girl that was her stepsister, so I got to go and see Ashley perform, and she opened for Rich Mullins.
Oh, wow.
So I got to go hang out backstage and meet Ashley, and I got to meet Rich Mullins, which is a whole crazy story all by itself. That dude was amazingly chill, and the whole time, anytime he would see us backstage, my sister and I, he would go, "Do you guys need anything? Are you doing okay? Everything all right? Are you having a good time?" All of this kind of stuff. And then I just remember I wasn't a huge Rich Mullins listener at the time, and I remember him walking out on stage and he was completely barefoot.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wait, what? Barefoot? You can do that? So, but then after I watched the documentary that they did on him, all of the stuff that I saw when I was there made a lot more sense to me in that regard.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
See, now not a lot of worship pastors do their thing barefoot, so it was ahead of his time.
right.
Well, and those stomp pedals to mess with. So
Yeah, exactly. That is very true. All right. So what do we got for clip number 4?
All right. You guys will probably not. I don't know. You might get this one. He's kind of big thing now, but on his very first album, he did a blues song.
Okay.
Give it a shot.
All right.
Wanna keep fighting, give me strength, keep fighting for you, oh God. I pray that I will be broken. The Spirit is usable to you.
Is this a rock artist?
Worship artist.
Okay. So I'm thinking like Chris Tomlin or something like that.
A little bit better guitar player.
Okay. All right. Tim,
It's,
you have any?
Lincoln Brewster.
Lincoln.
Oh, okay. Actually, he's actually a worship pastor not that far from here, so
Yeah.
he's actually played at our church. He's up in Sacramento.
He did a first album, self-titled, that was very eclectic, and I loved it. I think it's still his best record.
Wow.
So that was one track off of there that caught my attention.
Very cool.
See, he's one of those artists that looks like he should be played on Broken, but just needs to play rock music.
Yeah. His he did a live worship album that actually was an improvement because he let his solo fly. So I got to see him live recently, and he is talented. He busted out Eruption by Van Halen and some other stuff during the show, so it was cool.
Yeah, I hear he's a very talented artist, both singer, guitarist, kind of all around. He's like the whole package in that regard.
Yeah.
So
I just think his albums are a little overproduced. So
well, I think that's part of. the sound that they're going for, which is unfortunate because, then it makes it hard. I mean, unless you specifically do an album that you are intentionally calling stripped down or acoustic, it makes it hard to back away from the overproduction to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. And especially when that's the flavor of the month right now.
Right.
Or last 10 years anyway.
Right. Especially with pop style music.
There's a quick there's just a few blues artists or artists that have done some blues now. There are some Christian artists that do the blues and just about only the blues, including the former lead singer of the Resurrection Band.
Is that let's see. That's not Bob Carlyle.
Glenn Kaiser.
Glenn Kaiser. Okay, gotcha.
And then there's Darryl Mansfield. And then there's the mainstream blues artist Johnny Lang.
Okay.
That's doing Christian music now.
Wow, very cool.
So we can get into that next time.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll have to do, maybe you and I will get together and we'll do kind of a blues episode. Take people in a different, because I mean, blues is definitely an offshoot of rock. It's they typically run in different fashions, but
right.
I think that it's something that we could definitely work through.
All it is rock is basically now turned into blues music that the British couldn't play properly.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a plan. Awesome.
It almost sounds like the blues should have come out of the revolution. We'll show you how to do it right. We'll start our own country and do the blues.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. Oh my. Okay, so we've moved through that segment now, and we are going to be moving on to another little tiny segment that we're going to talk about. And Tim actually, he was supposed to pull some, but he neglected to do so between last night and today. But luckily, Kirk has saved the day again. But Tim, you wanted to revisit covers a little bit. What's your story on wanting to check that out?
It's just kind of a different take on things. It allows us to. As kind of Christian radio, we can actually expand it, almost acknowledge the rest of the rock world in a way, and it's kind of our vehicle to do that. I know you and I talked to Michael Sweet a few years ago. They did a whole covers record, which and they basically just laid out their influences from being on the rock scene in LA in the 70s, and it's kind of a vehicle where we can actually talk about things that aren't Christian, and it doesn't seem like people aren't up in arms about it. You can actually do songs about other things, and just going to talk about your influences, or revisit songs that were really big back in the day, but now just take a different take on it. I know my wife and I were in the car yesterday listening to Broken, and we were listening to Write This Down's cover of the No Doubt classic.
Yeah, Don't Speak.
Don't Speak, and it's kind of a different take because obviously it's not Gwen Stefani. It's not even a woman. But it's a song that was popular back probably about like 1998,
right? And
now it's just kind of a different take on it. But all sorts of kind of different ways we can go with it. Either that is the song that you always sing along to. I know on my show yesterday, we were playing some really kind of classic karaoke ones where it's like it's all these artists doing these covers, and you go, oh, that's familiar, but it's kind of a different take on it.
Yeah. Kirk, what's your take on covers themselves? Do you prefer that they stay true to the original? Do you want them to depart away from the original? Do you like it when they pull kind of the middle ground to where there's some stuff that's familiar but some stuff that's new? How do you like your covers?
I like my covers actually more in the middle ground, like especially if a band like a rock band takes a pop song and just adds that distortion level to it, grunges it up some. But then I've also heard like what was it? Grits did a U2 cover, and man, that just didn't work for me at all. And I think it was like Where the Streets Have No Name or something like that. And
yeah,
it just did not connect with me. But I like a good cover album. Like I remember the whole like the Larry Norman one, One Way, back in the 90s, and they Never Say Dinosaur.
Right.
Both of those, I'd say half the album was excellent, and then the other half was at they did that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. One of my favorites on that Never Say Dinosaur album was probably the Kevin Max, and I want to say Mastodon. They did
it was start of the P.
They did a cover of Louis Solo.
Yeah,
It was phenomenal. It was so good.
And the group that he did it with, I've never heard of since.
Right. It was like they got together that one time. They did this song, and then that was the extent of it. You never heard from this band again. So weird. So weird.
And then there was that U2 one that, like I mentioned, that it had like Chris Tomlin and Pillar was on it. Grits was on it. I forget who else was on that one, but it was really good as well.
Yeah.
For about half of it. And Chris Tomlin actually pulled off a really good cover of a U2 song, but he did it almost sounding exactly like the original.
Right. Oh, and so that's the thing. I don't mind it sounding so much like the original personally, as long as you can tell the difference. As in, if I'm going to get confused by the sound of the song and go, is this U2? I'm not sure. But it's hard to say if it's the actual artist or if it's someone else or whatever. I don't know. I'd kind of like it different enough to where I know what the song is, but they've kind of put their own spin on it. But then I hear similar songs, covers where they're similar, and it sounds good, so I'm okay with it. I know we have two versions of Bon Jovi's
Living on a Prayer. No.
Living on a Prayer.
That's actually it. That's actually what I played on my show yesterday.
That's the
and
one.
Every time we play it, I say on the show, it's like you were singing along to that one, admit it, because everybody does.
Right. So we have one by Stellar Cart that's pretty good, and then I want to say there's another one by it's either Philmont or Fillmore. There were kind of like two different bands that did it the same way. And Stellar Carts is pretty good. The other one is not so much. The guy's voice is kind of high-pitched and squeaky. But, I mean, you get a band like Bon Jovi, and if you're going to do covers of that band, you really have to step it up because you're talking about a song that, like Tim says, everybody's going to be singing along to.
Right.
It's not just, oh, yeah, that was a good song. It was like, oh, my goodness, this song is my childhood.
Yeah. And another thing is, it also depends on the style of the band. Like, if Five Iron Frenzy covered Bon Jovi and didn't ham it up a little bit or do it in a little bit of a ska fashion and change it up to their style slightly, I'd probably be disappointed if they did a note-for-note recreation of a Bon Jovi song. It does depend on the act. How I want the cover to come off. If like Pillar covered a U2 song and they really rocked it up and put it into their style more so, if they'd have done that song in U2's fashion, I'd have been like, this is terrible. Probably.
Yeah. When you said that, I was remembering when Five Iron Frenzy covered Tom Jones, and it's of course,
yes, it was great.
Exactly, because you can imagine Reese Roper doing it. He's probably dressed like Tom Jones, just because we know Reese enough to know that will happen.
Yes, but
doing the Carlton.
Our ladies flinging their underwear at Reese Roper like they do with Tom Jones.
Well, he's a married man now, so hopefully not.
So, yeah.
It was Cornerstone.
That's anything's possible.
I was just remembering, as we were talking, Relevant Magazine did an article a few years ago about 8 signs you were in a Christian rock band. And one of them is that you did covers of non-Christian songs. And they said popular song choices include select tunes from Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, and literally anything by U2. So,
yes.
We've seen that enough. Another one that was kind of funny was at least one of your songs was addressed to the devil. A lot of these are referencing Stryper in one way or another.
Or Jeff Moore, Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music?
Well, it does also reference Stryper's Bumblebee Yellow Combat Van back in the day. So.
Yes, which was awesome, and I would have had one given the opportunity.
Does anybody remember the band Soul Food 76?
A little bit.
They actually had a tour. They were like a retro 60s or 70s funk band, and they had a 76 something Chevy van conversion with shag carpeting on the interior.
Oh wow.
So it's just like the Shaftomobile almost.
Yeah, except it was a nice brown thing.
The band in Kansas had like an 84 Toyota van that was gold that I just dubbed the Golden Nugget.
Yeah. Bruce in the chat room is pointing out that that's a cover of a Larry Norman song. Yes, I do realize Larry Norman first did the song Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music, and Jeff Moore did a cover of it. But
it's one of Jeff's better songs.
I like Jeff's version.
Because it was a Larry Norman song.
I like Jeff's version better than Larry Norman's version personally. It just stylistically, I feel like it fits me better than Larry's.
Larry's an acquired taste. I've grown to like him a lot more than I used to.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. Well, Kirk, let's dive in. You've got 4 cover clips that you brought with. Do you want to talk about them, or do we want to play them and see if we can figure out who and what they are?
Let's have a little fun with it again. Why not? This band only put out 1 album. This is actually a hidden track in the middle of the album.
They hide tracks in the middle of albums?
They hid the track in the middle of the album. They actually just made like an 8-minute song. And so there's like a 45-second to a minute silence break in between the actual song and this cover.
Interesting.
And it was, I'll give you a hint, they were on Pamplin.
Okay. All right. Let's check this track out and see what we got. Okay, I have no idea who that is. Tim, do you have any guesses?
Not a clue.
Man, Kirk,
right.
you are just rocking it today.
Well, I went with the deep cuts.
Apparently,
deep cuts.
Yeah.
This actually came out almost at the exact same time that POD's cover of the same song came out.
Okay.
It was literally only like 2-3 months apart. This band was called Human from their album Out of the Dust.
Interesting.
And it was probably the best album that label for Pamplin ever put out.
Did any of them go on to do anything else with anyone else?
I don't think so, but I haven't looked them up in a long time either.
Gotcha.
So they were talented. I thought that cover was top notch.
Cool. Good deal. All right. So any info you want to give us about the next one?
Oh, you'll get the next one.
Oh, will we? All right.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
Give me shelter before I fade away. Oh, children, it doesn't shine away. It doesn't shine away. Oh, children, it doesn't shine away. It doesn't shine away. Shine away. Shine away. Shine away.
Oh, what in the world is going on there? Hang on one second here. Oh,
It's like I know that last clip that was Scientist.
Yeah, that was Scientist. That's right. No, I had my fingers on the wrong button. That was that problem. Okay, so was that Ashley again?
That was Ashley
It
again from a
was.
live album she put out.
Excellent. No,
That album won a Grammy.
Fantastic.
Man,
No, that
she
was a
can
good
sing.
cover.
Yeah, I actually like that better than the original. The original's a pretty terrible recording.
Yes. Yes, very much so. Very much so. All right. So cover number 3.
Cover number 3, former lead singer for Plank Eye,
Okay.
with his band, yeah, and I'll give you a hint. They cover a boy band.
Okay. So it could be New Kids, or it could be 98 Degrees, or it could be NSYNC. All right. Let's take a listen and see what we can figure out here. So I know the song was "I Want It That Way."
Yep. The album came out in 2000. Got anything, Tim?
Oh no. I'm thinking that's right in my wheelhouse, but yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, that. I mean, it's good. It's a good cover. It sounds good anyway.
Yeah. Scott Soletta had a band called Fan Mail for 2 albums.
Well, I know
Okay.
Scott Soletta because I've met him. We've talked about that before. But
And it's from the album Fan Mail 2000.
Very cool.
Well, that's a good
yeah,
thing it came out in
Backstreet.
2000 then.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Fan Mail 1996 coming out in 2000 wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, would it?
Party like it's 1942.
That's right, exactly.
Bombs
Tonight-
Now, this last
everywhere.
one, I just discovered it last night doing some looking around and stuff, and I had not heard this one, and I thought it was pretty cool. It's a pretty, I would say, in the last few years cover.
Okay. Is that all you're going to give me?
And, you should know it. I mean, I don't know. You should know the band.
All right.
I thought it was a cool cover, though.
Let's check it out and see what we got.
Free falling now, I'm free falling. Free falling now, I'm free falling. Free falling now, I'm free falling. Free falling now, I'm free falling.
Well, it's Tom Petty did the original.
Right. I know it's
So
it's a
And he
cover
sued
of
him.
Tom Petty. So,
Yeah.
which is
Tom Petty cover.
good, and it actually sounds really good. But who is the band? Who is the band? The voice
Sounds familiar.
It does. It
Yeah.
sounds familiar.
It's the Almost.
Oh, was that Aaron?
okay, that yeah.
It was. It was from an album I'd never heard of called Punk Goes Cover.
Well, they've been doing a lot of those.
Yeah, there's Punk
Yeah.
Goes Pop, and I mean, who is it? Who is it, Tim, that does the Britney Spears covers?
I was just going to bring that one up. August Burns Red, who, if you listen to our show, The Mayhem on Broken FM, you hear from a lot. They did Britney Spears, Baby Hit Me One More Time.
right. Hit Me Baby One More
Hit
Time.
Me Baby One More Time.
Yeah.
It's hilarious, and it's hilarious especially when you watch the music video, which is basically the Britney Spears music video with August Burns Red doing it. Now, the other one that I was going to bring up actually didn't technically get released. It was between when we do the Broken Record, we usually get the album a week or two in advance. We hear the record, we have the artist on. When we had Number One Gun on, the version that we got in the actual released version was slightly different because they were going to do Don't Stop Believin' by Journey, but apparently the label did not get the actual permission. And so by the time we actually did on the show, I think we may have played it on the show. And then
We did. We played it for the Broken Record because that was the version of the album that we had.
and just because we already had it. So if we hadn't already gotten it, they might have said, no, we're not giving it to you. But so some people, including us, have that version, but I don't think it was actually ever released.
Well, I think there were what it said was it got released initially with all that on it, and then very shortly, like within a week, they had to pull that album off the shelves and send out a new version that did not include the Journey song on it, because apparently the label did not do their due diligence in getting permission to put it on the album. So, but it is a
Gotta do that
great
legal stuff.
It's a great cover. I mean, it really does sound good the way that they did it. So that is definitely an awesome, but hard to find. You're not going to find it in too many places. So keep looking.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that was very cool. Thank you, Kirk, for pulling both the blues clips and those cover clips. We appreciate
You're quite
it
welcome.
very, very much. Last thing we wanted to talk about, Tim kind of brought this into the conversation, and so we'll spend a little bit of time chatting about it. But, one of the things that we hear about a lot in Christian radio is whether or not your station is quote unquote family friendly. So we kind of wanted to discuss a little bit about what is family friendly. Like, what does it mean to be family friendly? And is that something that we should strive for? What maybe are the pluses and minuses of thinking of something being family friendly? Tim, I'm going to let you start off since you kind of, since you brought the topic up in our conversation beforehand. Maybe give some of your thoughts on what is family friendly. And then, Kirk, it's going to be good because I know you're a family man, you've got kids, and so you will have some say as an opinion of what you would allow your kids to listen to, and is quote unquote family friendly something that you look for. and all of that kind of stuff. So we'll kind of, that's how we'll progress through this conversation. But Tim, I'm going to toss it to you and kind of let you run with it for a bit and give us some feedback on where you're coming from.
Well, I know with Broken FM, and both Chris and I have been with Broken since almost the beginning. It had been on the air slightly before we arrived, but we've never called ourselves family friendly. I like to joke that we can't call ourselves positive and encouraging either because Caleb has copyrighted that. And people believe me every time I say that. I must be really convincing. I mean, Caleb's very powerful, but they don't copyright that. But no, we don't call ourselves family friendly because we really strive to paint the Christian life as it is and not as it should be. I mean, all of us on this show and a lot of us on the staff at Broken have kids, and we are conscious of what they hear, but at the same time, everything that we talk about, we talk about real things. I mean, Chris and I host an interview show. I mean, things come up in conversation. We don't typically edit the show a lot. And things come up in conversation, and we'll steer everything towards Scripture. What does the Bible actually say about this, that, or the other thing? But we don't say, oh, you can't talk about that. I know people that do contemporary radio, and it's a completely different world. I know I'm a part of some radio communities and radio forums, and I actually brought this up to the forum once, and I said, well, does calling yourselves family friendly mean that you have to kind of shackle what you can talk about and what you can address as a Christian and as a ministry? And a lot of them said, well, yeah, they do. And a lot of this is maybe even a shift that we've seen in Christian radio, that the listener supported model is kind of faltering because people are you have to be so almost kind of fake, and almost you're so restricted that you come across as being less than genuine. And that's something that we've never wanted to be. And it's hard to see people not be able to talk about. You can't mention the word sex on the air. I mean, I've had I can remember a good radio friend of mine saying, I can't mention that word on the air or else get phone calls. Right. Doesn't matter what they're talking about. Doesn't matter if they're talking about what does the Bible say about it. No, it's like, no, I can't mention it because in a lot of contemporary radio, your audience is soccer moms. This is what all of contemporary Christian radio is built around this soccer mom audience. And it's what will Becky is what they basically call her. What will she think about what you're saying? And we basically said, well, we're not gonna play to Becky. We're gonna talk about what we want, and we're gonna talk about what comes up. And sometimes people, we had one guy that was deeply offended that Michael Sweet from Striper made a passing reference to enjoying an occasional glass of wine. He thought that was terrible and has never listened to Striper or Broken FM ever again. I'm surprised we don't offend more people, but it's just it's something that we've never we've never called ourselves because we don't really see any need to be. If we look at it, if we're pointing towards Scripture, and if we're pointing to what does God actually say about this, then we're okay. And so, I mean, so we're talking about real life.
Kirk, from your perspective, is family friendly something that you look for? And maybe what would your definition of family friendly be, and what age appropriate stuff do you strive for in your household?
Well, I don't look for family friendly. Like we have, I think we now have 3 Christian stations in this area where I'm at. 2 of them definitely are like, we're family friendly. Look at us, we. And when I listen to them, so the other one musically, I'd say musically they're family friendly, but their DJs have the levity to discuss heavier topics, and they will go, hey, look, you might not want little ears on right now. If you feel like this is too much for your group, your kids, please change the station. You're not going to offend us. Just come back in 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. And that's cool by me. I respect that. Now, and the subject matters have never gotten vulgar. That's the thing. There's discussions on subject matters that are touchy, and then there's being vulgar. And to me, it's 2 different things. Oh, yeah. And if discussing things that are touchy and edgy offend you, that's your problem, in my opinion. If you're being vulgar and offended, that's something different. Right. And so it all depends about context in a lot of ways, but the loud people that call and complain don't have context.
Right.
Bruce in the chat room says family friendly equals turn your brain off.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and some of that has to do with the artists that we talk to. I mean, if you're listening to like a K-Love, the chance that you're going to be listening to an artist that's ever been addicted to heroin is pretty low. But if you're listening to Broken FM, it actually happens pretty regularly. So, I mean, if you read, like, I think of when Brian Head Welch came out with his book, Save Me From Myself, Chris and I read the original version. And then apparently there was the family-friendly version, which I don't even know what that would be. Because
it would be a much shorter book.
It would be. Because he details...
3 pages?
Yeah. He's like, hey, I was in Korn and I'm a Christian, at the end. But I mean, he details, what it's like to be in this huge rock band and be, literally having your, drug dealers send you drugs in the mail to Europe while you're on tour. And I mean, in the end, it's him getting off of drugs and finding Christ, and he's much, on a much better path. But if we were like, well, we can't talk about drugs on our show, then, what would we talk about? His story becomes a lot less powerful.
Well, and so I think that there's, I don't want to say that there's a middle ground, because I don't feel there is. I think that part of our problem as a Christian society, as in the church, not society at large, I want to be clear with who I'm referring to. Those of us that go to church on a regular basis. I think that we have sanitized everything so much in order to steer away from offending people that we have not done ourselves any favors with how we raise our children. When it comes to aspects of that, let's think about how many good Christian kids that have played the game well while they're at home in their church and in high school and things like that, and then they go off to college and they go to a mainstream college, for terminology's sake, we'll call it a secular college versus a Christian college, and they end up making friends with people who do not help them make wise choices, and they end up doing a lot of drugs and doing a lot of drinking and not being such straight A students like they were in their good little confined environment. There becomes this point where I think we as families have to understand, look, if you are the one who exposes your kids to these things being in the world and helps them wrap their minds around what the Bible actually has to say about it, then I think that you will have a much better chance of your child making better decisions ultimately. When you sanitize everything via slapping on the family-friendly label, I think that you limit your child's ability to grow naturally and normally. Does that make sense?
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and there, Chris and I were actually talking about this the other day, that some of this is because, both Chris and I, have done things we're not proud of in our younger days, but at the same time, we've never been addicted to drugs. So, right. I mean, this is a whole new world. Or I remember when Chris and I used to teach a radio class, and we had our class do an audio project where they interviewed people that were in gangs. I have no point of reference for being in a gang. So, but, it was really interesting to hear these guys' testimonies, because this is something I know nothing about.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's that aspect. So, I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before. I know I've related it to other people in other times, but my parents, for my growing up years, my parents ran a Greyhound bus station in downtown. So when you talk about what downtown Santa Rosa is like, there is a huge mixture of all kinds of people. You will find just about any stereotype of somebody in Santa Rosa. What we saw coming into the bus terminal was all of those flavors of Santa Rosa. We had people that were high on drugs. We had people who were racists. We had a couple. I love this story. We had a small black family with a grandma. She must have been in her 70s, and there was this white kid who came in, and he did not like black people. And he started mouthing off to this family with every racial slur that you could possibly imagine. So my dad is about to go out and tell the kid who's making all the trouble to leave. Because, I mean, the family's not doing anything wrong. They're just sitting there. But they're being bombarded by this rude, intolerant person. So as my dad is about to try and go into the main part of the station, all of a sudden the grandma gets up, grabs the kid by the throat, takes him over to the phone booth. So we had a wall that had nothing but glass phone booths, you know, the kind like Superman would hop into when he wants to change, and you had the door to close. She drags him over there by the throat, and she grabs the receiver off the hook, and she is about to start pounding on this guy's head. It was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. But I mean, that's the kind of mixture of people. But seeing people that were homeless and mostly drunk, most of the time that I saw them, those homeless people that I saw in the station were mostly drunk or high on something. That exposure for me allowed me to make determinations and say, wow, if that's what drugs and alcohol can lead to, then I want to make the choice that I don't ever go down that road, because then I don't have to worry about that ever happening to me. And no, Bruce, they weren't police call boxes. They were actual telephone booths. So,
so this was not in the last 5 years.
No, it was not. Yeah. No Doctor Who references there. They were just your standard. But there was like a line of 6 of them.
It was Bill and Ted.
Yes, more Bill and Ted.
It was Chris's Excellent Adventure.
Exactly, more Bill and Ted. But so those kind of exposures for me, I felt like were positive things. It gave me an opportunity to talk to my parents about what was going on and why people were making these choices and what they were doing because of it, and how how those choices were bad in a lot of those regard. So it allowed me to see that and allowed me to make those decisions. Had I gone off to college, it would have been way less likely for me to get involved with drugs and drinking, because I'd seen kind of an end result of where it can go. Now, there are people that will have exposures like that, and they will say to themselves, oh, that'll never happen to me. That'll never be me. But I can tell you honestly, you don't know that it won't be you. So your best bet, in my opinion, is just not to go there. Just don't go there.
Well, and the other thing that
the power of the blood.
Well, the other thing that comes to mind is a quote that we talked to Steve Taylor when he was on the show, when he talked about if you made the Bible family friendly, it'd be a pretty short book, because if you just look at just the New Testament and you go, well, Jesus is hanging out with all these people that are not family friendly,
Yeah,
his followers,
exactly.
Got exposed to things that well, you can't have 5-year-olds exposed to. Why is Jesus doing these things?
Right.
He's actually talking to prostitutes, and he's actually in this world, and people actually like him. So obviously he's not just going out there going, well, you shouldn't do that.
No, I think that's a very, that's kind of a key thing. And I mean, if you think about it, the Bible's already been pretty sanitized overall. You think of accounts of different things when it talks about all of our works piled together and nothing more than filthy rags. Our translation says filthy rags, but the original actually says, like if you were to translate it directly, it would be more along the lines of a used tampon.
Right.
Which is pretty foul to think of. Over all of that stuff. Bruce is going through and listing out some stuff in the chat room right now. The story of David and Bathsheba, absolutely. Rahab, who was a prostitute. You've got all these different examples that, I mean, they've been washed to a degree, but not to the degree that we can't understand what they're talking about. And a lot of people think that the Bible is anti-sex, but there's an entire book of the Bible that is dedicated to sex and sexual pleasure, provided that it's in the right context. And that would be the Song of Solomon. If you ever want to blush reading the Bible, go through and do a study on the Song of Solomon,
Yeah, I had some friends in college that their commitment as a couple, they were like, we're going to wait till read that after we're married. And
right.
So now they're married, so they can read Song of Solomon now.
Yeah, exactly. Kirk, are you still with us, buddy?
I'm here.
He's here, but
yeah, your audio is really choppy. I don't know. Maybe the kids turned on a movie downstairs or something.
Let's see here.
You may want to try disconnecting and reconnecting, like close Skype and reopen Skype.
Will do.
And we'll give that a shot and see what happens there. So, with all of those examples of that, Tim, I think the whole idea of family friendly is kind of a misnomer in that regard. I really don't think that we need to try to be family friendly like that. It doesn't make sense to me. So,
well, I mean, I look at it, if we're trying to attract a non-Christian audience,
right,
and that we actually have something interesting to say, if we say, well, we're just not going to talk about huge chunks of society or what society actually cares about, we're just not going to comment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're doing any of our non-Christian listeners any favors.
No, you're absolutely right on that. And that's what I think that a lot of people don't understand is that it's you've got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to be able to establish whatever those limits are to try and understand where you're coming from in that regard. So it's always just, I don't know. It's crazy to me when I see so much sheltering. Now, I'm not saying, go out and show your kid somebody doing drugs in the middle of the street or whatever. But if you see something along those lines, I don't think you have to shelter them away from that. There's ways that you can, I don't know, talk about it without really going too crazy on it.
Well, and a lot of this is kind of couched in these redemption stories. I remember I was at a church where they were doing kind of testimonies, and this one girl got up, and the beginning of her testimony is, well, so there I was at the grotto at the Playboy Mansion. The story's going to end well, but you're like, well, I want to hear that now because I don't have any testimony that references the grotto at the Playboy Mansion at all.
Right.
So I'm just curious to see how this story ends.
Yeah, exactly. Kirk, your video's still not too great, but is your audio okay?
I'm not sure.
It's not too bad. It's not terrible.
Yeah.
Your video's just really choppy. So.
Well, I'm not seeing you guys anymore. Apparently, my connection has decided to be bad.
Yes, something has taken
Comcast, that's what's happened.
A downturn. So, let me see. I don't. Yeah, there. Maybe you're seeing me now.
Working on it. It's thinking.
It's thinking.
There we go. Yeah. It's Comcast. What do you expect?
Sometimes that happens. So. Well, let's, I think you have to make these judgment calls for yourself and your family as to what's best for you guys. Ultimately, that's where things are going to boil down to. But I think just be careful how much you try and protect your kids from the world, because there's aspects of that are good, but it's very easy, in my opinion, to take things too far and end up doing your kid a huge disservice by not exposing them or allowing them to be exposed to some worldviews. I think there's no way for a kid to refute a worldview if you don't teach them what that worldview is and then teach them the proper Christian aspect of that worldview. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up that way. My dad is like a Bible scholar. And so to me, it was natural to me that, if you're curious about something, you read about it. It wasn't like, well, all right, well, don't read about these things.
Right.
And, all right, and just don't go on the internet, and just don't ever read about anything that's not the way we taught you. It was well, go out, and if you have questions, we'll read books about it. Well, we will find the answer.
Yeah.
This is just kind of the way my dad is. It's like, it's almost weird. Like when I was growing up, and now that I have. A girl that's old enough to ask questions, that it's almost weird that when we go out there, she asked him a question about astronomy. My dad tutors astronomy at a college level, and it's like, and remember, at the time she was like 10.
Right.
It's like, okay, don't bring out 3 different books. It's like, she is 10, but This is just the way I grew up.
Kirk, what was your upbringing like, and were you exposed in those ways, or is that something that's kind of foreign?
No, I was in a box, never allowed out of the house. No. My upbringing was pretty conservative. I'll be honest. Like I couldn't watch PG-13 movies till I was 13.
Okay.
Unless my parents had seen the movie first and there was some specific reason they wanted me to see it. Musically, my parents never really got into what I was listening to. I always had headphones on or something like that. So that wasn't a big deal per se. But I also knew, I just always had that recollection of, okay, this is what they're doing and it's stupid. So don't do this.
Right.
And for the most part. And I've never, I personally don't drink, not because of my faith, but because of family history.
Right.
On my mom's side, my grandfather was an alcoholic. And I just, at an early age, I realized how that affected her. And so I decided, yeah, that's not for me.
Right.
And then when in college, I would drink a 2-liter of Dr. Pepper with a meal or something. What could I do with a 6-pack?
Right. Right.
So that's just my thing. And so my wife will have a drink every once in a while. We've let the kids taste some things here and there, and they think it's disgusting. I'm sticking to the same thing as far as movies go. Of we're going to wait till they're 13 for PG-13 movies.
Right.
TV shows, unfortunately, I think we're a little too lax on at times.
Yeah.
Like we'll watch, stuff like NCIS and stuff, and they can be in the room with that. But at the same time, it drives me nuts. Some of those people that will call you guys, you can't say sex on the radio, and then they go home and watch Game of Thrones.
Right. Right.
It's okay if HBO does it, but not Broken FM.
Well, we're held to a different standard, I think. And,
Well, yeah.
and I mean, first off, I think we as Christians love to be outraged about things. We love to be angry about something, and somebody's always doing something inappropriate, but we're never willing to look at our own inappropriateness and deal with it the way that it should be dealt with. We're more happy to point out everyone else's. Bruce in the chat room, he talks about the Christian vaccine, and he says to expound, a vaccine works because it exposes the body to a small amount of a virus so that it can develop an immunity to the virus. And I think that's a good analogy. If you take the time to be intentional in your exposure of your kids to these different things, and that let's not take this to extremes. That doesn't mean that you call your child over and say, hey, I'm going to show you 2 minutes of a pornographic movie so that you can understand that this is not okay. That's an extreme that you don't need to go to. But I think that there are ways, whether it be if something pops into, let's say your kid is 13 and you are watching a PG-13 movie and there is an allusion to a sex scene or something along those lines. It gives you an opportunity at that point to say, okay, these are standards that we believe are important to uphold, so we need to make sure that this is something that we try to do in that regard. This is what God's standard is, and this is how we try to maintain that. I think the same thing where if you are watching a movie where somebody has too much to drink, you then give your child the opportunity to understand, look, it's not the fact that he's drinking. That's not what's wrong. What's wrong is he's drinking too much. He's putting too much alcohol in his system, and it's going to impair his ability to make good decisions, or her ability to make good decisions, and it's going to impair their ability to drive a vehicle, to walk in a straight line, to think clearly. These are things that you don't want to allow yourself to get into because it puts you in a very dangerous place. And so, teaching your kid about that danger and how that the danger is real, but they don't need to actively be afraid of it. Like, you don't want to promote the fear response of, wow, that's out there, I'm never leaving the house. That's not the idea. It's like, hey, look, life is out there, and there's going to be times where things are going to be out of your control, but you need to learn to control those things that you can control. And if drinking is something that you can control, then it's fine to have a beer with dinner, or have a couple glasses of wine with dinner, or, out with friends and have something to drink, whatever. You use those as guidelines and basis for helping your kids understand, look, there is a bigger problem out there, but this is the thing that leads to it, so you have to be very careful how you utilize those things. I personally don't drink. I don't like it. It doesn't do anything for me. Tim is perfectly fine with going out to a restaurant and having a beer with his burger, or sitting at home watching the Giants game and pulling a beer out of his refrigerator. He's got that ability because he's okay with that, and he enjoys having a drink. For me, not so much. That doesn't mean that Tim and I can't spend time together, though.
Well, that's true. I'm here doing the show.
Exactly.
I even had a beer with Paul Gibson when he was in town. Well, I had one, he did not. But,
Right.
But it was kind of that same thing. I mean, growing up, my dad's the same way. My dad's very much a man of extremes, which makes him a great scholar and make him a really nasty drunk. So he just he does not drink at all. But at the same time, when we were watching movies growing up, I constantly kind of reference when we would be watching a movie and something that kind of went against our family's values. He'd make clear that that's not something that we do, but I didn't feel like I was, just kind of insulated. It was, okay, these things exist. We don't do those things, but they're out there.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's the same thing we do. We were like, if we see something on a TV or a movie, we're like, this is not how we should do this. Mm-hmm. Our biggest problem right now is PG movies before 1986.
Right.
Oh yeah, before there was a PG-13
was invented.
Right.
Like movies. I guess I might have seen them at the time. I'm not letting my kids. Of course, my kids are 5 and 8. And I can't let them watch Back to the Future yet. Mm-hmm. And it's been tough trying to find movies that are supposedly family friendly that truly are, just because of the language in them.
Right. Right. No, you're dead on there. Sarah and I are pretty restrictive with what we let the kids watch. I mean, most of their movie collection consists of VeggieTales and those kinds of things. We didn't introduce them to some of the Disney movies until much later in their lives than a lot of their friends, mainly because there is usually a very evil person within the movie. And so we wanted them to not have to have nightmares about the evil that person did. So we would slowly introduce them to these movies and have an opportunity to talk to them about the bad person and what makes them a bad person, and some of the things that they do and how what they do is wrong, and having those conversations. But there's movies and TV shows that we flat out will not let them watch. I don't want my kids watching SpongeBob SquarePants.
No.
I don't feel like that's a healthy TV show for kids. We have other friends who they are perfectly fine with letting their kids watch that show.
Yeah.
I personally am not. So
this is a Barney-free zone.
Yeah, Barney is another one that I don't want my kids watching. I don't want them being painted into that worldview. I don't want that embedded in their skull. So we will find TV shows that are more on the educational side. But I mean, when I say TV shows, I have friends who they let their kids watch TV, up to 6 hours a day sometimes. Just the TV's on and they're doing their thing, whatever. That's kind of how I was raised. That's not how my wife has asked that we raise our children. And so she and I talk about this on a regular basis. The kids maybe get to watch one movie once a week. It's not that often that we're sitting down and watching TV. Now, once they go to bed, we'll put on NCIS or something, but it's not while the kids are around, just because we don't want them to have to try and deal with the content that's within those shows.
Yeah.
It all boils down to you raising your kid the way you think is best, but understanding that not everybody's going to agree with that. And it's okay as long as you can dialogue about it. That's the big thing. Talk to other people about it, kind of get their opinion, make your decisions, but then go biblically and see, okay, what does the Bible have to say about how I'm raising my children? And I think that is ultimately going to be the thing that helps you determine what is the best way
and
to do
stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Like, because I think I'm doing a good job, but we're a lot looser with some of our TV shows and stuff than you guys are.
Totally.
But at the same time, we had some friends that are not some friends. We had an acquaintance that their grandchild, his favorite movie was Terminator 2.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he was like 5.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. So it's, it's all about context.
I mean, for Tim, Megan is 12 now, right?
12 and a half.
12 and a half, almost 13. So, I mean, you've got
you can go see Avengers.
Yeah. You've got even some more stuff coming your direction that you're going to be dealing with in the very near future if you haven't already.
She knows more about NCIS than I do.
Yeah.
She knows all about Gibbs and the rest of them. So.
Yeah, that's funny. Bruce says that his parents still don't own a television. He says, but on the other hand, the radio was on 16 hours a day.
Old-timey radio dramas are great.
Yes, I agree. We grew up, we would take road trips and we would have like Abbott and Costello and all of that stuff on cassette. And so we would listen to those on our road trips and have a blast. It was funny because they would advertise for cigarettes on
Yes.
on those radio shows. And I remember listening, and you'd hear the thing come on, CAMELS, Camels. More doctors smoke Camels than any other brand. And you're like, what in the world? Doctors are smoking? What? What is this world we're living in?
That
at
was
this
when
time?
cigarettes weren't bad for you in the 50s.
Yeah, apparently they didn't become bad for you until like the 70s and 80s.
Although it was funny when Broken FM was on Ustream back in the day, they would have like the pre-roll commercials, and somebody was very concerned that we were being sponsored by Jack Daniels.
Right.
But it's like we don't actually control what is the pre-roll commercial for this.
Well, and just like for the podcast here, if you're watching on Ustream and you don't have an ad blocker set up, I have no idea what the ads are that they're showing in between the breaks. So that's why I encourage people to turn on the ad block. You're not taking money out of my pocket. You're taking money out of Ustream's pocket. So, and I'm okay with that. It allows you to watch the stream without being cut off as often.
Well, back to music though. I'm thinking about my daughter's birthday is in September. So we're contemplating getting her a small iPod, like a Shuffle or a Nano or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have to, I feel like it's about time to have a talk about lyrical content. It's not, not so much the style of music you listen to, even though she wants to listen to country and I refuse to allow it in my car.
I am so happy you have said that, Kirk. Thank you. The world does not need more country music listeners.
Yeah, there are a couple acts I can respect, but that's about it. But she's all, of course, it's all Friends influence. She's all about Taylor Swift. I'm like, really? But at the same time, and she's pretty good, but she's got stories and lyrics in her music that I'm like, look, you need to take this stuff and think about it in a way that you just don't accept it as it's presented. You got to think about it. And when I have a massive collection. She has an iPod that she's borrowed from me, so I have complete control of what's on it. Okay. And so it's all like Christian pop stuff, high energy stuff, kids oriented stuff, and the Frozen soundtrack and stuff like that. And so I want to have that discussion with her of, the lyrics in music can affect what you think and how you think about things. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be I don't know how that conversation is exactly going to go. I've been mulling it over a little bit here and there. So,
yeah, I don't envy that conversation. We have, because my musical taste tends to be more on the heavier side of things, I kind of let my wife control what goes on the music that the kids listen to. And so she's done a lot of. We have the Frozen soundtrack, and there's I think a couple of mainstream songs like you remember the movie That Thing You Do?
Oh yeah.
There's a song on there that is Come On and Dance With Me Tonight. And so that song is on there because I don't find anything objectionable with it. But there's also some Chris Tomlin and some just nice guitar, like a Phil Keaggy kind of thing. That kind of stuff. But Sarah went through and actually put that stuff on to that iPod because she doesn't get or understand a lot of the lyrical content. And some of the songs that we play even on the radio are a little adult in some of their content just because it begins that conversation.
There's that artist Foreknown that's on Humble Beast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love this album, but there's a couple tracks that I skip when my kids are in the car. They're not bad. There's nothing racy or anything. It's just the conversation that if they actually paid attention to the lyrics, I would have to have at that time. And most of the time, I'm just not in the mood to have the conversation.
Right.
It's not that there's anything wrong with the conversation, but he has some pretty deep, and it's in a fun tone still, but he's got some pretty deep thoughts and ideas on there.
Well, that's the rap band The Truth is the same way. They've got songs that hit pretty heavy lyrically, just in dealing with certain aspects of sin. And so
Right.
that's not the kind of stuff that I would have on in the car when the kids are there, but I can listen to it and enjoy it and be okay because I don't have to worry about misinterpreting the lyrical content.
Yeah.
Tim,
And
go ahead.
No, at the same time, I'm going to encourage my kids to listen to Christian music, but I'm not one of those that's going to forbid secular music in the house either.
Right.
I'm the same way.
I'm going to, I definitely will want to listen to some albums before they get to listen to them. If Taylor Swift's new one or something like that, I'll suffer through it or at least look up the lyrics online or something,
Right.
To get an idea, or some artists and different things. I listen to stuff I probably wouldn't let my kids listen to when I was younger. So there's always that dichotomy as well.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Tim, is there anything that you have opted not to play that's been sent to you as a single because the lyrical content could be considered questionable?
Not that I can think of. Nothing. I mean, just a lot of that has to do with that we really only kind of deal in singles. I mean, there are artists that there are songs I can think of that are like, oh yeah, they kind of reference some of these things. They weren't singles; they didn't really come up. But it's kind of the same thing. I almost kind of more subtly test songs on my 12-year-old as we drive to school.
Right.
So just to kind of gauge where she's at based on what we're playing. Although it was really funny the other day. It's 5 minutes between my house and her school, and we like to joke, my wife and I, that anything can happen in this 5 minutes. Things will come out that don't come out the rest of the day.
Right.
And it was really funny that the other day she says, well, I like rock music. And I said, well, that's good because that's what I do. And she says, yeah, because there was cute boys in it. And so I was like, I don't really know how to respond to that. But no, she's into a lot of the more pop stuff too. That's kind of fun but that's kind of for her age. But I like that there are some really great Christian groups out there that are doing actually good stuff. Because I mean, Christian pop before that was just kind of cheesy, just like Christian hip hop is, even like Christian rock was back in the day. That the whole of all these genres are kind of stepping up their game a little bit. Because I'm going to be kind of the same way. I don't have a lot of time to see what's going on in more of the mainstream world, just because Christian music's what I do for work, and so
Right.
I think that just kind of consumes a lot of my listening time because this is what I do. But I have bands that I enjoy. I enjoy the Foo Fighters. Every time when they come out with a new record, I want to hear it. And there are certain artists out there that I'm only exposed to mostly because I watch The Tonight Show. There are all these artists that are their featured guests I've never heard of before they come on the show, and some of them, even like some of the hip hop artists, like I like Christian hip hop because it kind of the same way I like a lot of Christian hardcore is because they're actually saying something.
Right.
Ludacris was on The Tonight Show. He was saying absolutely nothing. I just turned it off.
Right.
It's like it's not even that somebody says vulgar. It's like you're not saying anything. There's no depth here. So
I don't understand the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Even when I do understand, there's nothing there to hear.
Right, right. Just emptiness. I think the only song that we've ever really had any, I won't even say issue with per se, but we decided we'd play it one time, and that was included on an episode of The Broken Record. And we decided after that we would never play the song, even if it were requested, was I Am by POD.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that track at all, Kirk?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I made sure my copy of that album had that song on it.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't know they sold a copy of the album with it
in
on.
Christian
I think
bookstores.
the Christian bookstores didn't get it.
Okay, so you
So
had to
it
go
has
to like
10
Walmart.
tracks rather than 11. But
Yeah,
on that one, that is my favorite track on that record because it does kind of stand out, and that's kind of where we kind of look at anything controversial at Broken. I had the conversation with Dustin, who hosts the Mayhem, our hardcore show, about if we were to have Manny Montgomery on. And what that'd be like, because our stance is that if there is controversy, we talk to the person involved because we'd rather talk to them than about them. And Sonny was great when we had him on. For one, if you talk to Sonny in an interview, he's going to bring the gospel. It's just going to be the way it is. But he talked about why they chose to do that, and it's kind of on that same level of when we were talking about the words in the original language they chose to use in Scripture. That these were, intentionally kind of provocative words because they want you to understand that this is a big deal. When they talk about that in that song "I Am," which is the song we're talking about from POD, they talk about heavy things and they want you to be paying attention. It's backmasked so we can actually do it FCC wise. But we chose to play that song because it was important, and we wanted to actually talk to Sonny about the song, about why they chose to do it, and not kind of use maybe a more Christian-friendly, semi-swear word.
Well, and we also wanted to be sure that Sonny didn't enter into it lightly. Not that we thought he did, but it turns out he talked to many people before he allowed the song to be released on the album, and all of them pretty much told him the same thing. Look, if you're doing it for the right reasons, then do it. If you're doing it because you want to stir the pot, then don't do it. And that, so he had to take a look at his reasonings for wanting to do it and make those determinations himself.
Or if he was trying to do it to be accepted in the mainstream rock world,
right, then
that would be a whole different thing. Would we go, well, we can't get behind that,
and that hasn't been a problem for Sonny.
No, and they're quite popular in mainstream rock world before that, still are.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem like a selling out thing. It was like, I want to call attention to something important here, so I want you to pay attention. There are a lot of good songs on that record. It's my favorite song on the record because it's saying something.
Right. Exactly.
Like I'm a fan of a lot of artists that have been banned in the Christian market, like the 77s and Mike Knott and the Choir, and a lot of those guys at the time in the 80s and the early 90s, they all put out albums that Christian bookstores would not carry, just because of lyrical content or just the subject matter. So I've always kind of been on that edgier side of Christian music, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, you have, like he was saying, it's the reasoning why they did it. Mike Rowe of the 77s put out an album that they pulled 3 songs from the record to put it in Christian bookstores.
Oh wow.
And there are lines, tough lines for just about anybody to listen to on one of the songs, because it's just about how it was a song about how you were thinking yourself as God. How you built yourself up to be your own God in a lot of ways. And he throws some lyrics in there that just kind of crush people.
Wow.
Well, and there was a record, when Family Force 5 came out with the record 3.
Yes.
We were going to have him on the show. We had already recorded the interview part. It was just a matter of we needed to get the copy of the record to actually finish building the show. And it's getting late in the week. I'm talking to the label going, I need this copy. And it was kind of an awkward situation because there was a releasing label and a distributing label. So I'm talking to the distributing label, and they're kind of being the go-between here. And they said, well, they don't want you to do the whole record because they don't think it's Christian enough. And I said, well, for one, it's my show. I mean, if I'm going to get flack, it's my name on the show. So I'm not that worried about it. I'd heard the record. I had no problem with it. I just wanted to put it out. We'd already recorded the interview. The interview was great. But they said, well, you can't do the whole show, and you can't do the whole record. And I said, well, that's not the way the show works. So we just had to skip it, and we did House of Heroes instead. But it was one of those things like, really? It's not like there was anything vulgar on it. It just wasn't. It wasn't. Every song wasn't about the gospel, and it was about these guys are married men, and, a lot of them, and they have wives. They write about their wives. That's okay, but they somehow then think, well, it's not Christian enough. And to me, I thought it was fine.
It's fine.
I thought it was funny they re-released that album without those 3 songs on it and put new ones in.
Right. Yeah, and called it a remix. Or 0.5 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. Well, we are running a bit long, so we're going to go ahead and call this right now. We want to say thanks to everybody for listening, and definitely have you check out our sponsor, tweakedaudio.com. 7 different styles, 7 different colors. I know Kirk and Tim both have copies or sets of their headphones, and they can tell you Tim is actually using his right now as we record this podcast. So
yeah,
sorry,
they work quite
I'm
well.
using my very expensive headphones right now.
Yeah, I noticed you got the nice cans on today. So
yeah, I got my Grottos on.
That's very good.
If I were in the Broken FM studio, I might be using ours. But these are doing quite well. I can hear Kirk all the way from Tennessee.
Amazing.
So
All right. Yes.
They they cross the country.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm about to actually order another set from Tweaked. I need another pair, so
Awesome. Good deal.
I got to get that done.
They have a nice long lifetime warranty, which Kirk really appreciates because he is devastatingly difficult on headphones, as he says so himself. So be sure to check them out. Use the code HARDPLACE when you purchase. You get a discount, 33% off, and then we get a little bit of a portion of the funds that you spend on the headphones, which is awesome. Free delivery, lifetime warranty, lots of styles to choose from. Promo code HARDPLACE, tweakedaudio.com. Safe as milk. Safe as milk.
Well, that's the album that had songs banned on it for Mike Rowe.
Gotcha. Okay.
So apparently not safe.
Yes.
Right. Though they had the chocolate milk version and the curdled version.
Nice.
I think the curdled version was the one without the songs on it.
Okay. Wow. Very cool.
Sorry.
Nope, not a problem. Let's see. If you want to support the podcast in other ways, you can go to our Patreon page and sign up to become a patron. You can donate any amount per month or do a one-time donation. It helps us just continue the podcast. It'll continue to be free. It'd just be nice to have a little bit of money to be able to get new equipment, upgrade computers, do those kinds of things. And you guys investing in us helps us continue to get better. So patreon.com/RNAHP is the place to go to do that. We want to thank our patrons who are currently sponsoring us. We do appreciate it very much. And we would love to see more people come alongside. The more people we get signed up for the Patreon, the more opportunities we have to do things like giveaways, and we can do merchandise and all of that kind of stuff. So be thinking about that. Be praying about it. If that's something that you think you can do, we would appreciate it. Kirk, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with Tim and I today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We appreciate it very much. It was awesome.
Yes, this was lots of fun.
Yeah.
It's been a blast.
We'll do this again. Yes. And Tim, of course, my co-host, thank you so much for hanging out today. I know you had to drive all the way up from Healdsburg to come hang with me, but all the way down.
In fact, I had to pass the Broken FM studio to get here.
That's
so
right.
I can actually be live in studio with Chris and not in a different studio.
We'll blame our wives for that.
That's true.
So not a big deal at all. But again, thanks, guys, so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. That is going to do it. rockandahardplacepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to email us, man, so many different ways to get a hold of us. That's it. We're out of here. Have a great one. We will catch you next time. We'll see you next week.